So I wondered if there was any interest in a quick video with like minimal editing on basically how I build a tactic from scratch. Fancy it? Free at the back? Okay, so we're going to start right here, clean slate. We're going to ignore the chosen styles because I'm going to show what I do to create one from scratch. So we go all the way down to create your own style, hit that. Now we just need our template. I'm going to look at a 5-3-2, probably DM, but maybe moving this guy up, we'll see. So that's the template we're going to use. And there we have it. Obviously, all these roles are going to change as we work the way through the team. Now the first thing I do when I come to create a tactic is I go to out of possession, believe it or not. From out of possession, this is going to help me structure the way my team are playing. Now I want to go for a solid formation that's going to be able to hit teams on the break and not concede many goals. So recently in FM, I've found using a lower defensive line being really positive, stopping balls over the top, which tends to happen quite a lot. So we're going to go with a low defensive line as a starter. Now options are from here to drop that down to a low block to play real on the counter attack. But what I like to do at the minute is still push that up there. So we're still going to press teams so they can't have time on the ball. But we're going to have that low defensive line as well, keeping us solid but a threat on the attack. At this point you might think like the players are too far apart, but when we go into the player instructions you'll see how we offset that. Now another positive of the low defensive line is it means we can trigger press a little bit more aggressively, going into much more often. If we were up here and doing that, we could get pulled out of place, out of shape, all over the place. But as we're going to be low, we're going to maintain a decent team structure so we can press quite aggressive. And we're going to add get stuck in. Now we'll take this off if we start racking up bookings, but for now we're going to use that. So now I've decided that I'm going for a solid formation with this low defensive line. So we need to work out what we're going to do in possession. Temptation would be to play more direct to get the ball up to the strikers, but because our guys are quite far apart, we're going to work it up a little bit better than that. So we're going to go for short passing. Now the good thing about having a low defensive line is there's going to be a lot of space to pass into. So we're going to pass into space and get the boys running onto the ball. Because we've got 3 centre backs, we're going to play out of defence. That just seems to make sense. And we want a real emphasis on the wing backs because they're going to be super important to create chances. So we're going to focus play down both sides and we're going to add in overlap right and left. Tempo wise, we're going to go with a higher tempo. If we start to totally dominate games, we're going to drop it to lower tempo so they can take the time over it. But higher tempo is going to be the set from the start. And that is our in possession done and our out of possession done. Next we're going to move on to in transition. So when I'm playing a low defensive line, I like to add counter press as well. Counter press will ask the players to immediately apply pressure when they lose it. So if we lose the ball high up, we'll apply pressure to try and get that back, knowing that the defensive line is quite low, so we shouldn't leave too many gaps. So we will add that. We'll also add counter as well because we're going to draw pressure onto us with the low defensive line. So when we win it back, that's when I want these guys arrowed to bomb forward. Where it goes to is interesting. This will depend on what we're playing. If we've got a good playmaker in this role, we will add that because then he can start the moves off, drop back in deep, start moves off that way. If we don't have a decent playmaker or we're not playing that role, I'll probably leave that bank for now. A little word on mentality, by the way. I like to leave it balanced or even in some cases cautious. If you go too aggressive, for example attacking, some of these guys back here or here will start playing crazy balls and giving the ball away far too often. Or your strikers will shoot at silly angles. If I maintain it on cautious or balanced, we'll wait for our openings and stick to the team instructions that little bit more. Okay, so we've got this low defensive line and these are the generic roles that it's given us, but we want to concentrate down the flanks. We've got focus play down the left and right with overlaps. Let's emphasise it. They don't have anybody in front of them. So the backup's going to come from the centre backs. We're going to use the wide centre back role on support both sides. So these two are going to support these two. And in turn, when they get a little bit higher up, it's going to encourage the wing backs to get a little bit higher up too. So that means the guy in the middle becomes really important. So I don't want him to cover because he's going to drop off. And if he drops off while these two are wide, there's going to be a bit too much of a gap. So I'm just going to have him on a normal central defender on defend. And this is going to be his zone. Now in front of him, we're going to go for the playmaker role in there. So we drop it into deep line playmaker. So he's in this role here. And in this role, rather than being higher up, he's going to drop back that little bit more and start moves off. My thinking is, because we've got the two wide centre backs, basically going to spend a lot of time there like that, this deep line playmaker will drop and just hover around here, cutting out a few balls, helping out this central defender, whilst maintaining his defensive deep line playmaker role. Now, like I mentioned before, because we're playing that low defensive line, we need some way of getting this ball forward faster rather than just hoofing it up. And to do that, we're going to ask each centre-back to dribble more. It's a risky move, but when you see it in game and your centre-backs start doing it, start dribbling more, they will bring that ball way up there, so it kind of counter affects the low defensive line. We're obviously going to have both wing-backs doing it as well, because they've got to dominate that flank, so they'll be dribbling more as well, both of them. Now in theory, your deep line playmaker is going to be one of your more talented players on the ball, so he's going to play a little bit more direct. Now a little tip for you, if you start here and you go up to your player instructions, you'll notice that you can't change his passing directness. However, back out of there, bring your DLP into that strata there, select it again, go to it, and now you can play the more direct passing. Press OK, move him on back, click on him, and he's still got it on there. So he's going to still play those more direct passes. As with the other players, because he's going to be sat quite deep, I'm also going to encourage him to dribble more, and because I need him to win the ball back a lot, get that tackle harder on. Now the midfield too, now they've got a job on because they're going to have to support the wing backs and the strikers as well. Hell of a job they've got on, and for me, the perfect role for this is going to be box-to-box midfielder. What you don't see often is two of them, and that's what we're going to do, but they're going to have slightly different roles thanks to the player instructions. One's going to be a little bit more aggressive than the other. We'll start with the more aggressive one. So he's going to get a bit further up and drift a little bit further up as well to support that fullback. So to do that, you'll see the box-to-box midfielder has not many hard-coded, just the roam from position, which basically means it's going to be up and down, which is perfect for this type of formation. So, like with nearly all the players, because of this low defensive line, we go to dribble more. I don't want him shooting too much because I don't want to waste these chances, so we'll shoot less often, but I do want this one to be getting further forward. We're moving into channel so he can back up those wing backs, and again we need him to win that ball back, and he's going to tackle harder. So he's going to be the more aggressive one, basically close to being a Mazzala because he's going to get further forward and drift as well. Now the other side, I still want him to be aggressive, but just not quite as aggressive as this guy, and that's going to be linked to the roles of the two strikers, which we'll get onto shortly. So I still want him dribbling more. You'll notice that's basically the whole team now behind the strikers who are dribbling more to get them higher up the park because of that low defensive line. We do want him to move into channels to back up those wing backs, and remember we are focusing play down both sides, and we're going to tackle harder as well. I will say this though, if you get an elite striker, midfielder who's good with shoot more often, I'm talking 15 plus long shots, there's nothing wrong with banging shoot more often on if he's at that level. If not, I'd take it off or even shoot less often like we did with the other guy. Now I mentioned the front two and why this midfielder is going to be more aggressive than this midfielder, and it's because of the roles of the front two. I'm going to need one of these guys to be a bit of a drop off. If I have them both on advanced forward, for example, they're going to be too isolated, too far apart from everybody. If we get one to be the link man, either with a deep line forward role, a target forward or a false nine, then he can drop in a little bit. This will mean that this more aggressive one kind of link up with him, so as he comes down, he pops back, kind of rotating in between. On the other side, he's going to be more of a focal point, doing more of the running, so he doesn't have to be as aggressive. So what we're going for is the advanced forward on this side, and next to him, I'm going to use a deep line forward on attack. He'll still stay high up, but he will drop off, move into channels, and move around a little bit. To encourage that a bit more, we're going to add roam from position as well. I'm going to stay wider, because remember, behind him, he's got the wing back, and he's got the box-to-box midfielder. So we're just going to be roaming around, dropping in the holes, providing through balls. Next to him, we've got the advanced forward. I'm not going to add anything onto that. I don't like to mess with the advanced forward role too much. And that squad is basically my 5-3-2 that we have created. Now I'm going to toy with the mentality. It's either going to be balanced or it's going to be cautious depending on the match situation. But that looks to me super solid. I will add one more thing, by the way. I do like a sweeper keeper on defend. It's one of the reasons I chose Inter Milan, because I knew they had the players to fit into this back three system. For example, if you look at Bastoni, he's the perfect ball-playing defender there. His passing is 15, his vision's 14. Ridiculous. Even his dribbling's 11 and his technique is 14. He's absolutely ideal for this role here. You can actually toy with him and push him to attack, but we'll keep it on support for now. They've also got the perfect deep-line playmaker in Brozovic and two great forward-thinking box-to-box midfielders in Barella and Hakan. Remember what I said about the box-to-box as well. If you've got someone with great long shots, I mean, look at that, 17. That's why we've kept shoot more often on Hakan. So good stuff there against Juve. There was also a 9-0 away win at Cremonese, followed by a big 5 against Verona, and arguably more impressive was this complete shutout of Napoli. In fact, as the season's gone on, we've hardly lost any matches. It's been super solid stuff. An annoying away defeat to Frankfurt. Even more annoying was that Empoli defeat, but other than that, those are the only 2 defeats we've had. It leaves us top of Serie A with only 1 defeat in 23. And we wanted a solid tactic, and it looks like we've got it. We've only conceded 11 goals in the entire season. 3 of those were against Empoli. There's the Empoli match. Now, if you look at Empoli's formation, that is the only time we've come up against a traditional diamond formation, and that's the one that's given us the biggest problems. So that's something to bear in mind. And it's probably because we have so much emphasis on the wide play with the wing backs and the wide centre backs and the guys drifting out. When we come up against a diamond like Empoli focusing right through the middle, that's largely where we got exposed. Something to think about if you're building your own. We finished the season with 100 points, only losing 2 matches. Another random defeat against Udinese. I don't know. But overall, 100 points, 97 goals, only conceded 27 with a goal difference of plus 70. Not bad at all. But for me, that's not the final version. I think there's tweaks you can make, but at least you can see my thinking in the way I go about building a tactic. Hope you enjoyed.